I never thought the biggest blow would come from the people who were supposed to be my support system. Just a month ago, I stood in the middle of my newly opened bakery, Morning Bloom, breathing in the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread and cinnamon, feeling on top of the world. I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, I've dreamed of this place. Not just baking at home for myself, but creating a cozy space where people could come and feel the warmth, see the vibrant desserts in the display cases, and forget about everything else. I poured everything into it, years of savings, sleepless nights, studying every nuance, every recipe, every secret from old bakers who were kind enough to share their experience. My family, however, never shared my enthusiasm. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My brother, Mark, is 31, and my sister, Sophia, is 29. Mark was always the golden boy in our parents' eyes. He works in finance, makes good money, always dresses sharply, and has a way of talking that makes people believe him, even when he's flat out exaggerating. Sophia is quieter, but she's always on Mark's side. If Mark says something, she nods in agreement. And then there was me. To them, I was always the one with silly hobbies. When I was a kid and wanted to bake pies instead of playing soccer, Dad would sigh and say, "Not everything in life is about fun, Austin. You need to think about stability." Mom wasn't as harsh, but she'd still add little comments like, "That's nice, but you'll outgrow it." Spoiler alert, I never did. After years of planning and saving, I finally signed a lease for a perfect little corner spot downtown. It used to be a flower shop, and it was so cozy, with big front windows. I put every penny into renovating it, painting the walls, buying equipment, designing the logo. Morning Bloom, simple, but it felt so right. When I sent out the invitations for the grand opening, I'll admit, I was nervous. I worked so hard to get the place ready in time, testing recipes, arranging seating, even hand-painting little signs for each pastry. I wanted it to feel special. Of course, the most important thing to me was having my family there. Even after years of being dismissed, a part of me still thought, maybe this time they'll see what I've accomplished. Maybe they'll be proud. The day before the opening, I texted our family group chat to remind everyone. Mark didn't respond, which wasn't unusual, he tends to ignore me unless he wants something. Sophia just sent a thumbs-up emoji, and my parents said, "We'll see." That phrase, "we'll see," has been the soundtrack of my life. Never a yes, never a commitment, just that lukewarm maybe. But I still told myself not to overthink it. On the day of the opening, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to start baking. By 7 a.m., the place smelled amazing, fresh cinnamon rolls, croissants, loaves of sourdough. I even made a special cake just in case my family came. The first customers trickled in around 8, and by noon, I actually had a small crowd. Strangers were complimenting me, telling me how much they loved the atmosphere, and some even asked if I was hiring. I should have been on top of the world, but I kept glancing at the door. Every time it opened, my heart jumped, thinking maybe it was Mom and Dad, or maybe Mark would surprise me, or Sophia would stop by. Hour after hour passed, and nothing. Not a single familiar face. Late that afternoon, when the rush had died down, I checked my phone. And there it was, a photo in the family group chat. Mark standing on a stage, holding a framed certificate, with my entire family smiling around him. It was his promotion party, apparently. He'd been promoted to senior regional manager or something along those lines. The caption under the photo from my mom read, "So proud of you, Mark. You've made us all so happy today." I don't think I've ever felt a mix of anger and sadness that strong. I was sitting in my own bakery, something I had built from nothing, and they were all celebrating Mark. Not even bothering to tell me they wouldn't come. Not a single message of apology, just silence, and then that photo, like rubbing salt into the wound. I closed up that evening feeling hollow. As I was locking the door, my phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. For a split second, I thought maybe it was an apology, maybe an explanation. Instead, it read, "Austin, we need to discuss the bakery. Call me when you can." When I got that text from Dad, "Austin, we need to discuss the bakery," I just stood there staring at my phone as if it was mocking me. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had just spent 11 hours on my feet, baking, smiling for customers, pretending not to notice the empty corner where my family should have been sitting. The last thing I wanted was to discuss anything with him. And yet, I couldn't help myself. I've always been the one chasing after their approval. I told myself, maybe, just maybe, this was his way of opening the door. Maybe he was finally going to acknowledge what I had done. I didn't call him right away. I cleaned up first, wiping down counters that were already spotless, stacking chairs that no one in my family had touched, wrapping up the special cake I'd made that no one had eaten. The place smelled of vanilla and butter, but to me, it felt empty. On the walk home, I replayed the family photo in my head, Mark beaming with that smug grin of his, Mom with her hand proudly on his shoulder, Dad looking like he just watched his son win the Nobel Prize. Sophia was off to the side, but even she had a wide smile plastered on her face. They all looked so unified, and me? I was nowhere in sight. When I finally got home, I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand. I typed, "Sure, what's up," and deleted it. Then I typed, "I had a good opening today," and deleted that too. In the end, I just wrote, "Okay." He replied within a minute, "Tomorrow evening, come by the house." That was it. No congratulations, no, "Sorry we couldn't make it," just a meeting request, like I was some employee being summoned to his office. The next day dragged on. I opened the bakery again, and thankfully, customers started trickling in. A few even came back from the day before, saying they loved the bread. That gave me a little spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this business could work. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was that conversation waiting for me at my parents' house. By the time I drove over there that evening, my stomach was in knots. Their house hasn't changed much since I was a kid, same dark brick exterior, same neatly trimmed hedges, same creaky front gate. Walking up the path, I felt like I was 12 again, bracing myself for one of Dad's serious talks. Mom answered the door. She gave me a polite smile, but it wasn't warm. "Austin, you're here," she said, as if I were a guest she hadn't been expecting. No hug, no "how's the bakery going," just a flat tone. Inside, I saw Sophia sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone. Mark was there, of course, lounging in Dad's favorite chair, one leg crossed over the other, looking like he owned the place. He smirked when he saw me. "Well, if it isn't the woman of the hour," Mark said. "How's life in the cupcake business?" I bit down the urge to respond. I knew if I snapped back, it would only give him more material to use against me. Instead, I sat down at the table across from him. Dad came in a moment later, carrying a stack of papers. He didn't bother with small talk. He placed the papers on the table, sat down, and folded his hands. "Austin," he began, "your mother and I have been talking, and we think it's time we had an honest discussion about your bakery." That pause before the word "bakery" told me everything. He said it like it was a bad habit, like smoking or gambling. I leaned back in my chair. "All right," I said cautiously, "what about it?" He adjusted his glasses and slid one of the papers toward me. It was an article printout, something about small businesses failing within the first 5 years. "Look," he said, tapping the page, "statistics don't lie. Most bakeries go under. You've put yourself in a risky situation, and frankly, we're concerned about the financial implications. You need to be realistic." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the first thing he'd said to me about my bakery. No mention of the grand opening, no acknowledgement of how hard I'd worked, just statistics about failure. Mark chuckled from his chair. "He's right, you know. It's cute that you want to play shopkeeper, but Dad's being generous giving you advice. You should listen." My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm not playing shopkeeper," I said. "I had a great turnout yesterday. Customers like the food. This is something I've built from the ground up." Mom sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "We're not saying you haven't worked hard, Austin, but Mark's promotion shows what stability looks like. He has a real career path. We just don't want you to throw away your future chasing a hobby." That word, hobby, hit me like a slap. After everything I'd done, they still saw it as some childish distraction. Sophia finally chimed in, not even looking up from her phone. "Maybe if you listened to them, you wouldn't end up broke." Just saying. I looked at each of them, feeling a mix of rage and hurt. Then I turned back to Dad. "So why am I here? What exactly do you want to discuss?" That's when he dropped the bomb. "We think it would be wise if you let Mark help oversee the financial side of your bakery," Dad said firmly. "He has experience with money. He could make sure you don't get in over your head. It would give us peace of mind." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I stared at Dad, then at Mark, who was smirking like a cat who'd already caught the mouse. "You want Mark to run my bakery?" I asked slowly. "Not run it," Dad said quickly, "just manage the important parts, finances, planning, things you're not equipped to handle. You'd still bake, of course." Mark leaned forward, grinning. "Think of it this way, Austin, you do the fun part, kneading dough, frosting cupcakes. I'll handle the grown-up stuff. That way, everyone wins. Everyone except me." I sat there, my hands clenched under the table, trying not to let them see how much this was getting to me. My own family, who hadn't even shown up to support me, was now telling me I wasn't capable of running my own business and suggesting Mark, of all people, swoop in and take control. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the papers Dad had pushed toward me and then at Mark, whose grin had grown wider the longer I stayed silent. My mind was spinning. The bakery, the thing I had poured years of sweat, savings, and soul into, was being reduced to a project that Mark would manage for my own good. Every instinct in me screamed no, but I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down, the same weight I'd carried my whole life. I don't think that's necessary," I finally said, my voice low but steady. "I've managed the finances myself. I've got a business plan. I've done research. I've saved money for emergencies. I don't need Mark overseeing anything." Dad's expression hardened, the kind of look I'd seen countless times growing up when I tried to argue with him. "Austin, we're only looking out for you. It's not about control, it's about guidance. Mark has a proven track record. You're passionate about baking, and we just want to make sure it doesn't fail." Mark leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Look, little sister, I'm just offering help. You don't have to take it if you don't want to. But don't say I didn't offer. I know what it takes to make money, and right now, I'm not sure you do." I felt my chest tighten. Everything about this was familiar, Mark talking down to me, Dad pretending it was for my own good, Mom silently approving while Sophia nodded along. They had spent decades underestimating me, and now, even when I had proof that I could succeed, they were trying to put me in a box again. "Do you even understand what you're saying?" I asked, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "I didn't just open this bakery yesterday. I've built this from nothing. I've put in the work, the money, the nights I didn't sleep. This isn't just a hobby, this is my life." Mom sighed again, like I was being dramatic. "Austin, we understand that, but life isn't fair. You can't just expect everything to work out because you worked hard. Mark is offering practical help, that's all." I looked at Mark, whose smirk was now fully smug, like he had the upper hand. "Practical help?" I said slowly, my voice rising slightly. "You mean taking over the parts I've been handling so you can claim credit for any success and I'll just bake the cupcakes?" Mark laughed, a light, condescending chuckle. "You're making it sound so dramatic. I'm just trying to help, and honestly, Austin, you don't have to be so defensive. No one's taking your passion away. You'll still bake, but you're inexperienced. You'll make mistakes. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in on me. Every part of me wanted to explode, to shout, to throw the papers across the room, but I couldn't. Not yet. I had to stay calm. I had to think. I'll make mistakes, I repeated, my voice quieter but with an edge. Mark, I've already launched the bakery. Customers came. They liked it. They came back today. Do you know what that means? It means I can do this without you or anyone else telling me what to do. Dad's eyebrows furrowed, and I saw the shift in Mom's eyes, concern, irritation, the same look they'd always given me when I dared to challenge them. Austin, you're letting your pride get in the way. You need guidance. You've never been one to make practical decisions. I shook my head, feeling something break inside me. Years of being dismissed, ignored, and put down all at once. The grand opening, the hours, the customers, the smells of fresh bread still lingering in my clothes, none of it mattered to them. They only saw my lack of practicality. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, and spoke slowly, deliberately. Do you know why no one came to my opening yesterday? I asked, looking each of them in the eye. Because you all had something else to celebrate, Mark's promotion. And you didn't even bother to tell me, not one of you. You left me to close up the bakery alone. Do you understand how that feels? There was a brief silence. Sophia finally put her phone down and looked at me, a flicker of guilt or maybe annoyance crossing her face. Mark shrugged. Dad cleared his throat. Mom's expression didn't change much. It was a scheduling conflict, Mom said finally, in that tone that made it clear she thought I was overreacting. A conflict? I repeated incredulously. You mean you chose Mark over me? You chose him and left me out, and now, after everything, you want to tell me I need his help running something I built myself? Mark leaned forward this time, eyes glinting, his smile sharper. I think you're exaggerating. Everyone deserves a little guidance. You've done well, Austin, but don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. That's a dangerous combination in business. My blood was boiling, but I felt a strange calm overtake me. I realized then that this wasn't just about the bakery anymore. This was about respect, about finally showing them that I wasn't the kid they dismissed all my life. I picked up the papers Dad had laid out, looked at Mark, and then at my parents. You're not helping, I said slowly. You're trying to control me. You're trying to take credit for something you had nothing to do with. And you can keep your guidance. I don't need it. Not from any of you. Dad's face darkened, and I could see Mom's frustration growing. Sophia whispered under her breath, she's being ridiculous. Mark's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flash of surprise. I could see it in his eyes, he hadn't expected me to fight back like this. Then Dad leaned back, pinching the bridge of his nose, and said in that quiet, dangerous tone I knew all too well, Austin, you're going to regret this. You think you're ready to run a business? You think you can handle everything on your own? You're young, naive, and stubborn. You don't realize how much you're risking. We were trying to protect you, and you. I cut him off, my voice steady and ice cold. Protect me? No. You were protecting yourselves. Making sure Mark looks good, making sure I stay small so you can control the narrative. That's not protection, that's manipulation. The room went silent. Even Sophia looked shocked. Mom's jaw tightened. Mark's eyes narrowed. I knew I had hit a nerve. I could feel the tension so thick it was suffocating. Then Dad slammed his hand on the table. That's enough, Austin. You're being ridiculous. You'll see soon enough that you can't do this alone. And when you fail. I stood up so quickly the chair screeched against the floor. I won't fail. I said, my voice rising with conviction. And when I succeed, it won't be because of any of you. It will be because I believed in myself when no one else would. Mark laughed, a hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. We'll see about that. And that's when I realized something terrifying and exciting at the same time. I was done playing their game. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I could feel it in my bones. I was going to prove them wrong, and not just a little. I was going to make them wish they'd never underestimated me. But before I could even begin plotting what that would look like, Mom's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with a small, satisfied smile. You might want to see this, she said, passing her phone across the table. I took it, my stomach dropping. On the screen was a notification from a local business blog I hadn't realized had covered small openings in town. There was a picture, my bakery, packed with customers, a line stretching down the street. But then my eyes went to the comments. There, at the very top, someone had left a comment that made my heart sink. Looks like someone's trying to compete with Mark's franchise. Hope they know what they're doing. And that's when I realized my family wasn't done with me yet. Not by a long shot. I stood there, staring at the comment on Mom's phone, feeling a hot, sharp clarity burn away the last remnants of my naive hope. It wasn't just about a meeting, or a gentle discussion about my career. This wasn't about guidance. It was a calculated move, a public and humiliating attempt to discredit me before I even had a chance. Mark's smirk, Dad's condescending tone, Mom's feigned concern, it all clicked into place. They weren't just betting on me to fail, they were actively trying to set me up for it. The thought sent a jolt of rage through me, cold and clean. I handed the phone back to Mom without a word, my hand steady. The time for pleading for their approval was over. This was a war, and for the first time in my life, I felt ready to fight. I left their house without a goodbye. I didn't wait for the usual strained silence or the condescending advice. I just turned and walked out the door. Sophia looked up from her phone, her eyes flicking between me and the empty space I left, a flicker of something unreadable on her face. Mark, for his part, still looked smug. He hadn't seen the comment. Not yet. He had no idea what I was feeling, what I was planning. But he would. Oh, he would. The walk home was a blur. My mind was a storm of calculations and plans. I didn't just want to prove them wrong. I wanted to make them regret every single word they'd ever said to me. The comment, that insidious little jab, was the perfect weapon. It wasn't just a random stranger, it was someone who knew enough about our family dynamics to link me to Mark and his franchise. It was a message, a declaration of their allegiance. They saw my small, independent business not as an achievement, but as a threat to Mark's carefully curated image of success. And a threat needed to be neutralized. For the next few days, I worked like a person possessed. My body was on autopilot, kneading dough, frosting cakes, serving customers with a smile I didn't have to force anymore. Every loaf of bread I baked was a statement. Every sale was a victory, my own victory. Every positive review online was another piece of armor. My bakery, Morning Bloom, became my sanctuary, a fortress against their judgment. The smell of yeast and sugar filled the air, and for the first time, it felt like my air. My space. I started tracking everything meticulously, customer feedback, daily sales, even the most mundane expenses. I was a business owner, not a hobbyist, and I was going to have the numbers to prove it. I didn't answer their texts. The family chat remained a one-sided conversation of Mark's bragging and Mom's replies. I saw a picture of him at another work event, looking polished and confident, and a new one of my parents and Sophia having dinner out. They were deliberately ignoring me, pretending my grand opening, my bakery, my very existence, didn't matter. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was a calculated move to break me, to make me reach out first, begging for their approval. But I didn't. I had a different kind of plan. One afternoon, a journalist from a local food magazine, the same one that had posted the blog comment, came into the bakery. They said they were doing a feature on new businesses and heard great things about Morning Bloom. My heart pounded against my ribs. This was it. This was my chance to tell my story, to show them all that I wasn't just playing shopkeeper. I spent hours with the reporter, showing her my recipes, explaining my business plan, and talking about the community I was building. I talked about the early mornings, the long hours, the years of saving. I didn't mention my family by name, but I made it clear that I had done it all on my own, that I had overcome unseen obstacles and skepticism from those closest to me. I wasn't subtle. I wanted them to read it and know exactly who I was talking about. The article was scheduled to be published online in a few days. The waiting was agony. I couldn't focus. I'd check my phone every few minutes, half expecting a frantic text from Dad or Mark. But nothing came. The silence was deafening, yet underneath it, I could feel the tension building. They knew I was up to something. I was no longer the little sister they could dismiss. I was a threat. The morning the article went live, I didn't send a link. I didn't need to. Within 2 hours, my phone was buzzing with notifications from friends, acquaintances, and even some customers who saw it. They were all so happy for me, so proud. My bakery, Morning Bloom, was on the front page of the local food magazine's website, with my smiling face next to a perfect loaf of sourdough. The headline read, "Against all odds, local baker finds success." But the real drama began when the family group chat finally exploded. The first message was from Dad: "Austin, this is not what we discussed. What are you doing?" Then came Mom's text: "You didn't have to do that. Why are you airing our private matters?" I could almost hear the indignation in their voices. Then, the silence from Mark's side of the chat. He hadn't said a word. The silence was more terrifying than anything else. He was the one who understood strategy, who knew how to play the long game. I knew he was just biding his time, formulating his next move. The article had hit a nerve, a deep, sensitive one. He hadn't expected me to fight back so publicly. I wasn't just a threat to his reputation, I was an embarrassment. That night, as I was closing the bakery, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It seems your little article is getting a lot of attention," it read. "Maybe it's time we had a talk about our partnership after all." My blood ran cold. It was Mark. And he wasn't just suggesting a partnership. He was calling in a favor. I didn't know how he was planning to make me regret it, but I knew he would try everything to gain control. The game was on. I stared at the text from Mark, the glowing screen feeling like a brand of mockery against the darkness of the street. "It seems your little article is getting a lot of attention," it read. "Maybe it's time we had a talk about our partnership after all." My blood ran cold, then boiled. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a thinly veiled threat. He wasn't just offering help, he was offering a way to avoid whatever talk about our partnership meant. I didn't reply. I just locked the bakery door, walked home in a daze, and spent the night tossing and turning. The game had escalated, and I could feel the invisible web of Mark's influence tightening around me. I knew he wouldn't just send a text. He had a plan, and it was probably already in motion. The next morning, I went to the bakery as usual, but the atmosphere felt different. The friendly smiles of my customers seemed to hold a hint of curiosity, a knowing look. It could have been my imagination, but a few people actually mentioned the article. "Hey, I saw you in that magazine," one woman said. "That's so cool." I smiled and thanked her, but inside, I was bracing myself for the other shoe to drop. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer it, but my gut told me to. It was a vendor I used for some of my specialty ingredients, a small, family-owned supplier I'd been working with for months. They had been reliable, their prices fair. "Hey, Austin," the owner, a man named Mr. Peterson said. His voice sounded strained. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cancel your next order. We just can't fulfill it for you right now. I was stunned. Why? Is everything okay? I asked. I'm not sure, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I just got a call from my bank. They said a major client of theirs, a new partner in one of those big chain bakeries, has offered to consolidate all of my business. They offered me a huge contract, but the condition was that I had to drop all my smaller accounts, including you. I'm sorry, Austin. I can't afford to say no. My hands shook as I hung up the phone. It was a direct hit. The new partner in a big chain bakery could only be one person. Mark. He hadn't just offered to help, he had already started cutting off my supply lines. He was using his financial connections to leverage my suppliers against me. I tried to call another supplier, a flour mill a few towns over. The woman on the other end of the line was friendly, but when I tried to place an order, she sighed. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, but we just signed an exclusive deal with some big franchise. We're not selling to individual businesses right now. I wish I could help. My heart sank. 2 suppliers, 2 days. He was working fast. I spent the next 3 days in a panic, scrambling to find new suppliers. I had to buy ingredients from grocery stores at much higher prices, and the quality wasn't the same. I was worried I wouldn't be able to fulfill my existing orders, let alone take on new ones. The stress was crushing. I wasn't just losing money, I was losing the very quality that made my bakery special. The feeling of success that had been so strong just a few days ago was slowly being eroded, replaced by a constant, gnawing anxiety. Then came the next blow. My landlord called. He was usually a kind, older man who loved the idea of a local bakery in his building. Austin, I have to talk to you about the lease, he said. I've been approached by a representative from a corporation that wants to open a chain coffee shop in the building. They've offered to buy me out of my contract with you, and then they'll offer you a buyout of your own. They're very aggressive. I told them no, but they're making a very compelling offer. I'm a small business owner too, Austin. I need to think about what's best for me. My world was spinning. It was a direct attack on my location, the one thing I couldn't replace. I knew this wasn't a coincidence. This was Mark. He wasn't just trying to help me. He was trying to dismantle my business piece by piece. First the ingredients, now the building. He was systematically trying to force me to fail, to break me down to the point where I had no choice but to accept his help. The game was no longer about proving myself, it was about survival. I spent the next week barely sleeping, constantly on edge. I would get up at 4 in the morning to find new suppliers, driving for hours to different towns to get ingredients, coming home exhausted and worried. I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't talk to my parents, because they would just see this as proof that I needed Mark's guidance. I couldn't talk to Sophia, because I knew she'd just side with him. I was alone, fighting a war against a ghost, an opponent who was always one step ahead. The stress was taking a physical toll. My hands, which had been so steady with dough and piping bags, started to shake. I made mistakes I never would have before, forgetting to set timers, burning batches of bread, miscalculating orders. One day, a customer complained that the cinnamon rolls didn't taste the same, and I had to force back tears. I'm so sorry, I said, we had a small issue with a supplier. The woman just looked at me with a mix of pity and disappointment. It was a feeling I knew all too well from my family, and it was crushing to see it on a stranger's face. As the second week of this silent war came to a close, a package arrived at the bakery. It was a large, elegant gift basket, overflowing with gourmet coffee beans, artisan teas, and expensive chocolates. Inside was a note, handwritten, from my parents. We are so proud of Mark, it read. He has truly shown us what it means to be a leader. We're so blessed to have him in our lives. We hope you're doing well. Maybe you should call us soon. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a sign of truce. It was a victory lap. They were celebrating his win, a win that came at my expense. They saw the damage he was doing, they knew he was behind it, and they were congratulating him. My hands clenched on the edge of the counter, a silent scream building in my throat. I wanted to smash the basket, to throw the contents against the wall. But I didn't. I just stood there, the anger a cold, hard knot in my stomach. The next day, as I was desperately searching for a new flower supplier, I received an email. It was from a real estate agent. The landlord had accepted the buyout offer. I had 1 month to find a new location. Mark wasn't just trying to force me to fail. He was trying to erase me. I stared at the email from the real estate agent, my mind blank. 28 days. That's all I had. 28 days to find a new location, move all my equipment, and rebuild a business that was already crumbling under the weight of Mark's relentless assault. The rage I'd felt before was replaced by a cold, numbing despair. He wasn't just trying to force me into a corner, he was trying to choke the life out of my dream. Every time I thought I had a handle on things, he was already 2 steps ahead, using his financial power and connections to systematically tear down everything I had built. I went home that night, not to my apartment, but to the bakery. I sat on the floor in the middle of the empty space, surrounded by my baking sheets and flour sacks, and for the first time in weeks, I just cried. I wasn't crying because of the business. I was about crying because of the betrayal. My family, the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally, were actively rooting for my failure. They were celebrating his victory as he worked to destroy me. It wasn't about the bakery anymore. It was about me. They were trying to prove that I was nothing without them, that my dream was just a childish fantasy. I sat there for hours, the moon casting long shadows through the big front windows. I replayed every conversation, every sideways glance, every condescending remark. It was all a pattern, a slow erosion of my self-worth. I thought back to the grand opening, the empty seats where they should have been. The photo of them celebrating Mark. The email from the real estate agent felt like the final piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. The next day, I didn't open the bakery. I couldn't. The thought of facing customers, of smiling and pretending everything was fine, was unbearable. I just sat in the back, surrounded by the smell of stale flour and lingering bread. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sophia, my sister. I hadn't heard from her since the night of the meeting. Hey, it read. Dad's going to be talking to a real estate agent about a new office space for Mark soon. Just thought you should know. The message was cryptic, out of character for her. It was a warning, a breadcrumb of information. It didn't make sense. Why would she tell me this? I sat there, staring at the message, 1,000 questions running through my mind. I was so used to seeing her as Mark's shadow, his silent accomplice. But this felt different. She hadn't offered sympathy or advice. She had given me a piece of information, a secret that could only have come from the inside. A few hours later, I got another text. He's looking at the old flower shop where you are now, it read. The message was from a different number, one I didn't recognize. It's a rumor from the real estate community. Mark and Dad are planning to turn it into a satellite office for his new division. They're going to use it to house his team and some of their clients. Looks like the building owner is interested, but the price is high. Hope this helps. The pieces fell into place with sickening precision. It wasn't just about forcing me to fail. It was about taking over my success. The old flower shop, the perfect corner spot with the big front windows, was the symbol of my dream. Mark wasn't just trying to get rid of me, he was trying to replace me. He wanted to take my place, to build his empire on the ruins of my dream. He wasn't just leveraging his connections to stop my business, he was leveraging his family's money to steal my location. The anger returned, hotter and more intense than ever. It wasn't just a general rage anymore, it was focused, sharp, and purposeful. I wasn't fighting for my business anymore, I was fighting for my dream, for my identity, for everything they had always told me I couldn't have. And I knew exactly how to fight back. I spent the next 2 days working non-stop, not on my bakery, but on a different kind of plan. I reached out to a lawyer, a family friend who specialized in property law. I gathered all my documents, the lease agreement, the business license, the emails from the real estate agent, and the text messages from Sophia. I showed the lawyer everything, explaining the situation and my family's actions. He listened, his face growing grimmer with every word. "This is very serious, Austin," he said. "Your brother is not just trying to buy you out. He's using his position to interfere with your business operations. This could be considered a form of corporate espionage, or at the very least, a hostile takeover attempt." I went to the bank. I spoke with my business loan officer, a woman who had been a great supporter of my bakery. I explained the situation, showed her the evidence of Mark's interference, the cancelled contracts, and the threat of losing my location. She listened patiently, her expression a mix of sympathy and concern. "This is highly unusual," she said. "We've never seen anything like this before. It's a clear attempt to disrupt your business and force a default on your loan. We can't just let that happen." She promised to look into some options, but she warned me that if Mark's side had legal ground, it would be a difficult fight. I knew my plan was risky. I had to go a step further, to play a game they thought only they could win. I had to hit them where it would hurt the most, their reputation. I spent hours writing, not for a magazine this time, but for something else. A public statement. A detailed account of everything that had happened, from the grand opening to the current hostile takeover attempt. I named names. I included screenshots of the texts and the emails. I laid out the entire story, leaving nothing out. Then I faced the moral dilemma. If I posted this, there would be no turning back. It would be a public declaration of war against my own family. It would not only damage their reputation, but it would expose a deep, personal betrayal to the world. It would be a permanent stain on our family name. The thought of doing it made my stomach churn. But the thought of letting them win was even worse. If I didn't fight back, I would lose everything, my business, my dream, and my dignity. I hit send and watched the post go live. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "What have you done?" it read. "You're going to regret this. We need to talk. Now." The tone of his message was no longer smug or condescending. It was frantic. For the first time, he was scared. The game was no longer in his control. I had changed the rules. And the world was watching. The panicked text from Mark, "What have you done?" was a victory sweeter than any pastry I'd ever baked. For the first time, he was on the defensive. My phone began to buzz non-stop. Texts from Mom, "Austin, what is the meaning of this? You can't just air our family problems online." A call from Dad, "Take it down, Austin, right now. You're going to ruin everything." I didn't answer. I just sat in the quiet, empty bakery, a strange sense of calm settling over me. I had done it. I had pulled back the curtain on their perfect little world, and now they were all scrambling in the light. The post went viral in our local community. Friends and customers shared it, and the local business blogs and newspapers that had praised Mark's career and my bakery now had a new story to tell. It was a scandal. The comments section was a mix of shock, outrage, and support for me. People who had been Mark's clients and business partners were calling him out. His reputation, the very thing he had built his entire identity on, was unraveling. The phone calls, the messages, they weren't just about the post anymore. They were about the scandal. The game had changed from a family feud to a public spectacle. The next day, my parents and Mark came to the bakery. They didn't call first. They just walked in, their faces tight with a mixture of anger and humiliation. The bakery was closed to the public, but I was there, getting things ready. Sophia was with them, her eyes darting around, looking for an escape. This time, there was no condescending smirk from Mark. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Take it down, Austin," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're going to destroy my career. You're going to destroy us all." I looked at him, then at my parents. "You did this," I said, my voice steady. "You chose to tear me down, piece by piece. You chose to try and steal my dream. I was fighting for my business. You were fighting for your pride." Dad stepped forward. "This is not about pride, Austin. This is about family. We were worried about you. You were making a mistake, and Mark was trying to save you from it." The words rang hollow. "He was trying to save himself," I countered. "He tried to take over my suppliers. He tried to take my building. All because you couldn't stand the thought of me succeeding on my own. You couldn't handle the idea that I might be more than the naive child you've always seen." Mom began to cry, but I knew it wasn't for me. It was for the scandal. "Please, Austin. Just take it down. You don't know what you're doing." Mark, seeing that reason wasn't working, changed his strategy. "All right," he said, his voice quieter now, a new kind of manipulation in his eyes. "Let's be reasonable. We'll give you a generous settlement. You can take the money and open a new bakery somewhere else. We'll even help you find a new location." He was still trying to buy me out, but this time with a bribe. The money was a symbol of his control, a way to make the problem, me, go away. I looked around my small bakery. The worn wooden floors, the little signs I had hand-painted, the oven that still held the warmth from the previous day's baking. This wasn't just a business. It was my story, etched into every wall and every counter. It was a testament to everything I had overcome. The thought of starting over somewhere else, of erasing this chapter, was unbearable. "You don't get it," I said, a wave of profound sadness washing over me. "It was never about the money. It was about respect. It was about you acknowledging my dream. But you couldn't do it. You still can't. You can't even stand in this room and admit that what you did was wrong." There was a long silence. They just stood there, staring at me, at the truth I had laid bare. The truth that their golden boy, their perfect plan, was built on manipulation and sabotage. The truth was, they couldn't see it. They were so blinded by their own narrative of control and success that they couldn't grasp the reality of their actions. I knew then that I would never get the apology, the recognition, or the validation I had spent my entire life seeking. They would always see me as the rebellious child who destroyed their reputation. And I would always see them as the people who tried to destroy my dream. I made my decision. I was going to fight this. Not to win them over, but to win for myself. I didn't take the post down. The lawyer was confident we had a case. The real estate agent, having seen the public backlash, backed out of the deal with Mark's corporation. My suppliers, also seeing the situation unfold, reached out and offered to work with me again. The community rallied around me. My bakery, Morning Bloom, became more than just a place to buy bread. It became a symbol of resistance, of fighting for a dream against all odds. I never spoke to my parents or Mark again. Sophia sends me a text every few months, a simple, "How are you?" to which I reply with a photo of a new pastry. I never hear from them again until the next message, and that's okay. The silence is different now. It's not a silence of rejection. It's a silence of peace. I don't need their approval anymore. My success is my own. And as I stand in my bakery, surrounded by the smell of bread, I know I'm not alone. I'm with every person who's ever had to fight to be seen. The story is over, but my life, the one I built for myself, is just beginning.